Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Today is Wednesday, which means it's the day where I answer your questions. It is the Ask Me Anything, and I've got a lot of good questions this week. And before I get into the questions, I just want to give an update on the project that I've been working on. I've mentioned a couple of times, I believe, that I am getting ready to finish a book, and I'm writing the afterword right now, which is sort of like the conclusion, the epilogue sort of thing. Although I found out that epilogue and afterword are two completely distinct different things. So it's the afterword, and that's W-O-R-D, because it's the word that comes after the main part of the book. So that is what I'm working on now. Hopefully I will have the fundraiser that I've mentioned. I'll have that ready to go in a couple of weeks. And the reason that I'm holding off is because I want to make sure that everything is pretty much done before I kick off the fundraiser, because then there's other things that I need to get done to like finalize, do like the finalization sort of thing. And one of those is turn the book into an audiobook, and I know that's going to wind up taking some time. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared to begin doing that before I start the fundraiser. And the fundraiser will run for 2 months. And again, just like, keep an ear out for that. So now let me jump into the questions. And I will begin with one of the more difficult questions at the beginning. And I'm doing this intentionally, that way if I wind up giving, like too long of an answer, I can condense the other stuff later. But this is one that I definitely want to make sure that I am able to give thorough information about. The question comes from someone who is planning on traveling up to New Hampshire for PorcFest. That's the Porcupine Freedom Festival that happens June 21st through the 28th. At the Rogers Campground in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. The question is, in which states is it illegal to transport your handgun with you in your car, and do any states that allow it have restrictions on how to do so? And I've got some information here from the National Rifle Association, and as some of you may know, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the NRA, but they do have good information on things like this. And the reason that I say I'm not the biggest fan of the NRA is I think that they waffle and compromise a little too much. And I understand, I understand the need to compromise occasionally, but the NRA, for my taste, compromises too much. There are other organizations that advocate gun rights, one of them being the Second Amendment Foundation, which I am a life member of. But again, the NRA, they do put out some good information, and this is one of them. Or rather, this is some of the good info that they put out. So they have up on their website a guide to the interstate transportation of firearms. And they begin by saying, caution, state and federal firearm laws are subject to frequent change. This summary is not intended to be legal advice or a restatement of law. To determine the applicability of these laws to specific situations you may encounter, you are strongly urged to consult your local attorney. And I realize not everybody has an attorney. And again, I'm not giving legal advice, but this is, some helpful information that might help you in your travels to New Hampshire, or travels anywhere, really, if you are carrying a firearm with you. The text of the article here begins, federal law does not restrict individuals from transporting legally acquired firearms across state lines for lawful purposes, except those explicitly prohibited by federal law, to include convicted felons, persons under indictment for felonies, adjudicated mental defectives, or those who have been involuntarily committed to mental institutions, illegal drug users, illegal aliens, and most non-immigrant aliens, anyone who was dishonorably discharged from the military, anyone who has renounced their U.S. citizenship, a fugitive from justice, a person convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence, and a person subject to certain domestic violence restraining orders. Therefore, no federal permit is required or even available for the interstate transportation of firearms. So, assuming that you don't fall into one of those categories and that you are legally able to have a firearm and you want to transport from one place to another, then it is helpful to know that there is a federal law called the Firearm Owners Protection Act that protects those who are transporting firearms for lawful purposes from local restrictions which would otherwise prohibit passage. Under FOPA, notwithstanding any state or local law, a person is entitled to transport a firearm from any place where he or she may lawfully possess and carry such firearm to any other place where he or she may lawfully possess and carry such firearm. If, and this is the very important part, if the firearm is unloaded and locked out of reach. In vehicles without a trunk, the unloaded firearm must be in a locked container other than the glove compartment or console. Ammunition that also needs to either be locked or out of reach in the trunk or in a locked container other than the glove compartment or console is also covered. Travelers should be aware that some state and local governments treat the federal provision as an affirmative defense, and this is something else that is very important. They treat it as an affirmative defense that may only be raised after an arrest. So even though there's a federal law in place that says that if you have a firearm that you are legally allowed to have and you are transporting it to somewhere else where you are legally allowed to have it, so basically if you're beginning your trip anywhere other than like New York or Massachusetts and you're going somewhere else, then under this federal law, as long as the firearm is locked and out of reach, then you should be okay. But some states treat that as, well, you know what, we're still going to arrest you, charge you with a gun crime, and then when you go before the judge, you can say, but judge, I've got federal protection under FOPA. And then the judge says, okay, case dismissed. So even though there's a federal law, it might not necessarily protect you from running into problems. And I'll give a little bit more information on this when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. And don't forget, this is the Ask Me Anything edition. You can have your questions answered. Send those via email, ama@fppradio.com. During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, we aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience. Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. I'll get back to the AMA in just a moment, but first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Since 1977, Roberts & Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270 or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. So the NRA information that I have here, they actually have a specific section about transportation by vehicle. And I'm just going to read this real quick. If you're traveling via airplane, then there's all other kinds of hoops and hurdles to jump through. So what I would suggest, instead of me relaying the info, is contact the airline that you're going to be traveling on. And the reason that I say that, it's not so that, it saves me from talking, but it saves me from giving incorrect information, because every airline is going to handle that slightly differently, even though there are federal regulations on the hows and the whats. So, for instance, Delta might do it one way, American Airlines does it some other way as far as their paperwork goes. So if you're planning to travel via aircraft or bus or train, contact the bus, train, or airline company. Now, if you're driving, or if you're doing a ride share where somebody else is driving and you're in their vehicle, this is going to be the most relevant. And I think that this was the intent of the question, because I know that the person's going to be driving. So the text here from the NRA says, in most states, firearms may be transported legally if they are unloaded, cased, and locked in the automobile's trunk or otherwise inaccessible to the driver or any passenger. And that's important. Any passenger. Meaning if you've got somebody in the back seat, you cannot have it up under one of the seats. Unless you've got like one of these, like 4 rows sort of things and it's all the way in the back. But then, like if they can climb over a seat. So lock it in the trunk is your best bet. The exceptions to this rule apply mainly to transportation of handguns and so-called assault weapons. The myriad and conflicting legal requirements for firearm transportations through the states make caution the key for travelers, of which you must consult local law. If you travel with a trailer or camper that is hauled by an automobile, it is advisable to transport the firearms unloaded, cased, and locked in the trunk of the car. If your vehicle is the type in which driving and living spaces are not separated, the problem becomes one of access. If the firearm is carried on or about the person or placed in the camper where it is readily accessible to the driver or another passenger, state and local laws regarding concealed carry of firearms may apply. It is recommended, therefore, that the firearm be transported unloaded, cased, and placed in a locked rear compartment of the camper or mobile home where it is inaccessible to the driver or any passenger. Generally, a mobile home is considered a home if it is not attached to a towing vehicle and is permanently attached to utilities, placed on blocks, or otherwise parked in such a manner that it cannot immediately be started up and used as a vehicle. And then they say, once you reach your destination, state and local law will govern the ownership, possession, and transportation of your firearm. And since I know that this person is coming from a state that has constitutional carry, meaning that a concealed carry permit is optional, and New Hampshire might be becoming constitutional carry at some point in the near future, meaning that a concealed carry permit may be optional in the near future in New Hampshire. The legislation went through both the House and the Senate. Now it's going through the processes before it goes to the governor's desk. And I've not heard whether or not the governor is going to sign or veto. But if she vetoes, there might be enough to override the veto. I'm not really sure. But anyway, there are some states like Mississippi and Vermont and Arizona where you are not required to have a concealed carry permit. And actually, Vermont does not even have such a thing as a concealed carry permit, meaning that anyone who is lawfully allowed to own a firearm, meaning you're not otherwise prohibited, then you can carry that concealed and no paperwork is required. So what I would suggest if you're coming up for Pork Fest, because the law hasn't changed yet, plan on open carrying in New Hampshire if you plan on carrying. And then if the law winds up changing before then, I will make sure to mention that, hey, you can conceal and you don't need a permit. But as of right now, gun crimes are one of those where you really don't want to get convicted of. And, I can't really think of anything where people are like, yeah, I just can't wait to get convicted of fill-in-the-blank law. But the reason that I say gun crimes are the ones that you don't want to get convicted of is because if you do go to a jury, then a jury is going to be a little less sympathetic because, oh, well, this guy was convicted of a crime with a gun. He must be really dangerous. He needs to go away for a long time. Even though it could be something as simple as, I did not realize that I crossed the state line into a state where I need a special piece of paper to be able to conceal this. And the reason I say that is because there are times where, especially in states where there's a straight road that just goes along, this curvy state border, and you don't realize that you've entered into another state. I did that one time where I accidentally drove into Massachusetts. And yes, I know you might be thinking, like, how the hell do you accidentally drive into Massachusetts? But I did because I got on a road going south instead of north, and I never saw a sign. And the only way I found out is because I looked at the receipt on the restaurant that I was eating at, and it actually wasn't even me. It was the guy that I was with. He was like, wait, did you just drive us into Massachusetts? And I was like, I don't think so. Looked at the receipt. Yep. He was like, we need to get the hell out of here as soon as possible because I'm not allowed to have this thing on me. And he was open carrying, which is perfectly legal in New Hampshire, but Massachusetts, not so much. So, long story short on this, be careful and definitely, look into this a little bit more. I will post the link, and there's other links on gun ownership, concealed carry, open carry states, etc. But the advice that I will reiterate, lock up the gun, keep the ammo separate from the gun. You do not want ammunition in your gun that is locked up because ammunition in a gun is a loaded firearm. And even if it's locked up, if you have a loaded firearm and you do not have a concealed carry permit, you are in big, big trouble. And when we come back in the final segment, I will breeze through 3 more questions. And I will do so very eloquently, or at least I'll try to. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. I'll get to these final questions here in just a moment, but first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Survivor Max by Davy Barker. And no, you will not have to worry about zombies at Porkfest, but Max has to worry about zombies in Survivor Max. 11-year-old Max must survive the zombie apocalypse alone in New Hampshire. The slow-moving, non-thinking lame brains swarm his home searching for living flesh. Max must apply his Porcupine Freedom Scouts training to plan his escape, but first he must prove that he's too smart to die. Look for Survivor Max by Davy Barker on Facebook and Amazon, or you can read Chapter 1 for free at survivormax.com. That's survivormax.com. So let me go through these remaining questions. The next question is, does Shapeshift.io basically wipe out the cryptocurrency exchange market? Now, Shapeshift, for those of you not familiar, is a tool that was created by, I believe it was Eric Voorhees, that allows you, with limits, to send one cryptocurrency to someone accepting another cryptocurrency. For instance, let's just say that you wish to send me some Bitcoin, and you see my Bitcoin QR code on the website there at fpp.cc, or at donate.fppradio.com. You want to send Bitcoin, but you only have Litecoin, or Dogecoin, or Potcoin, or Namecoin. Well, with Shapeshift, you can click a button that says Donate Altcoins, and that is right there on donate.fppradio.com. Click that. It will pop up a window and ask which currency you want to send. You select from a list of somewhere near 30 cryptocurrencies and put in the amount that you want to send, and you send the cryptocurrency, and then I receive Bitcoin. And so the question is, does Shapeshift basically wipe out the cryptocurrency exchange market? And the reason that the question is asked this way is because you could just as easily send yourself those Dogecoin or whatever to your Bitcoin address, or you could send Litecoin to your Dogecoin address. So it does allow you to convert your own, do your own crypto exchange sort of thing. And I will answer with one word: no. Shapeshift does not wipe out the cryptocurrency exchange market because there are limits. And the reason there are limits is because the people at Shapeshift are then doing the conversion on their end. So they have to have these limits in place to cover, whatever margin and whatever they have on hand. So because there are limits, it cannot completely replace the exchange market, because let's just say you've got $1,000 worth of Dogecoin. I don't even know if it's possible to have $1,000 worth of Dogecoin, but I digress. So let's just assume that you have $1,000 worth of Dogecoin and you want to convert that to something else. Well, Shapeshift might have a limit of 500. I'm not sure what their limit is, but I know they have limits. So you might not be able to convert everything you wanted to convert. Therefore, crypto exchanges still are going to exist, and Shapeshift is basically a tool for something else, in my opinion. Next question. What are the pros and cons of the minimum wage? And this is something that is always interesting to me, especially whenever there's the debate about increasing the minimum wage. And this question isn't what are the pros and cons of increasing. This is a question about what are the pros and cons of just having a minimum wage. And so I did a search to try to find out what the people that advocate for a minimum wage or even a higher minimum wage say the minimum wage does. Well, what are the reasons they give? And I found an article here from several years ago from the Houston Chronicle. And this person claims that a minimum wage helps families. And they make this claim because they say that in 1999, nearly 40% of minimum wage earners in the United States were a working parent, and 33% of minimum wage earners are married couples raising children. Now, it does not say whether or not both members of the couple are making minimum wage, or if it's just one of the members of the married couple that is working a minimum wage job. And I tend to think that it's only one member of the family that is working a minimum wage job, and it's generally mom working a part-time job to supplement the income of dad. And, there definitely are exceptions to that, but that is, for the most part, what it is, to where you've got somebody that is taking a part-time second job, and they don't really care what it is. They're not trying to make a lot of money. They're not looking for, like, a second career. They're just looking, something to make a little extra money. And so that is really what that is. So to say it helps families, bogus. They also claim that a minimum wage reduces a tax burden because people earning the minimum wage are not collecting unemployment. But at the same time, they fail to see that having a minimum wage keeps some people from attaining a job, which means that you're then going to have these extra benefits because they're saying, let me read verbatim. A person making at least minimum wage is not using as many public services as someone on unemployment. An unemployed worker is given welfare, rent, assistance, and food stamps in many states. With minimum wage, the need for public assistance is lowered, and this reduces the tax burden on the community and the state. So it could be argued that, having a minimum wage reduces that, but at the same time, no, it doesn't. Because just because somebody's making money at a job does not mean that they are not collecting any of these other public assistance things. So that is bogus. They claim that a minimum wage is an employment incentive, and, well, any wage is an employment incentive. The question is whether or not somebody's willing to work for the wage that you're offering. A minimum wage prevents an employer from hiring somebody at an otherwise agreed-upon rate. They claim that a minimum wage helps with business budgets, as if not having a minimum wage dictated by the state would mean that business owners would no longer know how to do math or how to pay their employees. I don't know how to pay my employees because the state never told me how much I should pay. Like, it's absolutely ludicrous. And they also say that it helps with negotiations of salaries. And again, bogus. Well, I didn't get to question number 4, and I'll throw that one on next week. And if you've got a question, send it AMA at FPPradio.com. This has been Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.